Listen carefully, because what I'm about to tell you might save someone you know from decades of psychological torture. If you're watching this right now, if you clicked on this video, there's a reason. Maybe you recognize yourself in this title. Maybe you know someone trapped in a narcissistic family system. Or maybe you just love a good revenge story where the underdog finally wins. But before we dive in, and I promise you, this story has a revenge so satisfying it went viral with 39 million views, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button. Seriously, do it now. Because if you're dealing with a narcissist in your family, you're going to need all the support you can get. And drop a comment below with just one word, survivor, if you've ever been the scapegoat in your family. Let's show each other we're not alone. My name is Bowie, and for 27 years, I lived in hell. Not the kind with flames and pitchforks, but something far more insidious, a narcissistic family system in Fort Wayne, Indiana, where I was systematically destroyed from the inside out. Picture this, a 4-year-old child standing in the corner of a pristine living room, tears streaming down their face, while their cousin Morgan stands triumphant, pointing an accusing finger. Bowie broke the vase. I saw them do it. Morgan declares to the gathering of aunts, uncles, and grandparents. The child, me, hadn't even been in the room when it happened. But that didn't matter. It never did. In narcissistic families, one person uses manipulative tactics to create divisions among family members, pitting them against each other, with the scapegoat always getting blamed when things go wrong. That was my reality from the moment I could form memories. Morgan was 3 years older than me, the golden child of our extended family, the one who could do no wrong. While I was labeled difficult, oversensitive, and problematic before I even learned to tie my shoes. Our grandmother would literally introduce us to people as, "This is Morgan, our little star, and this is Bowie, well, Bowie tries their best." But here's what makes narcissistic family abuse so insidious, it's invisible. Unlike physical abuse, parentification and emotional abuse are invisible and therefore more toxic and insidious. There were no bruises to show teachers, no broken bones to explain to doctors. Just a slow, methodical destruction of my sense of self. By age 7, I had already taken on the role of the family servant. This instrumental parentification involved managing household finances, caring for younger siblings, and taking on practical tasks that were typically the responsibility of adults. While Morgan was at dance classes and playdates, I was balancing my aunt's checkbook because she just wasn't good with numbers. I was cooking dinners for family gatherings because Bowie is so helpful, aren't you, sweetie? The psychological study by Day, Burke, Townsend, and Greenier from 2020 on pathological narcissism, a study of burden on partners and family, could have been written about my childhood. Every characteristic they identified was present in our family dynamic. The triangulation, where Morgan would whisper lies about me to different family members, creating conflicts that kept everyone focused on how problematic I was rather than examining their own behavior. The gaslighting, where events I clearly remembered were denied or twisted until I questioned my own sanity. I remember the Christmas when I was 9. I had saved my allowance for months to buy Morgan a special edition of their favorite book series. When they opened it, they looked at it with disgust and announced to the entire family gathering at my grandparents' house on Fairfield Avenue, "Bowie got me used books for Christmas." They probably found them in the trash. The books were brand new, still in their plastic wrapping. But the family laughed. They always laughed at Morgan's jokes about me. Narcissistic families are often obsessed with creating and keeping the perfect family image, with any imperfections usually blamed on the scapegoat. Our family's image was carefully curated. The annual holiday photo cards, the Facebook posts about family is everything, the public displays of unity. Behind closed doors, I was the repository for everyone's failures, disappointments, and rage. My mother, who should have protected me, was the ultimate enabler. She had her own trauma from being parentified as a child, and she perpetuated the cycle. Some parents turn to their children because they never learned to handle their feelings or were themselves parentified and learned that it is the children's role to take care of their parents. She would come to my room at night, sometimes drunk, sometimes sobbing, and tell me about her marital problems, her financial fears, her regrets. I was 10 years old, holding my mother while she cried about my father's emotional distance, trying to come up with solutions to adult problems I couldn't possibly understand. The social media comparison started early with Morgan. By the time we were in middle school, they had already mastered the art of digital manipulation. They would take photos at family events, carefully cropping me out or capturing me at my worst moments, mid-bite, eyes closed, looking exhausted from the work I'd done preparing for the gathering. These would go online with captions like "Family Fun Day." Bowie was too tired to really participate, as usual faced with tears of joy. Meanwhile, Morgan's Instagram and later TikTok accounts painted them as the perfect cousin, the family hero. They would post videos doing random acts of kindness for homeless people, filmed, of course, volunteering at animal shelters, for exactly long enough to get the content, and giving motivational speeches about overcoming adversity. What adversity, I still don't know. Their followers ate it up. The public humiliation was relentless. At my high school graduation, a day that should have been about my achievement in graduating with honors despite everything, Morgan gave an impromptu speech during the family dinner at Grand Wayne Convention Center. They stood up, tapping their glass for attention, and said, "I just want to say how proud we all are that Bowie finally accomplished something. We were all so worried they wouldn't even graduate, given their struggles." They paused for effect. But here we are. Proof that even the family's biggest challenge can surprise us sometimes. The room laughed. My own parents laughed. I sat there, in my graduation cap that I'd kept on because I was so proud of it just moments before, feeling it burn on my head like a crown of thorns. That was the night I started planning my escape. What my family never knew, what I'd hidden for years with the survival instinct of someone raised in psychological warfare, was that I was documenting everything. Every cruel comment, every financial exploitation, every moment of parentification and abuse. But more importantly, I had discovered something that would change everything. When I was 15, my grandmother had me help her with some computer stuff she didn't understand. She was trying to set up online banking, and in her confusion, she gave me access to financial documents I was never meant to see. That's when I discovered the trust fund. My great-grandfather, whom I'd never met, had been a successful real estate developer in Fort Wayne. He'd left trusts for all his great-grandchildren, to be accessed when we turned 25. But there was a crucial detail in mine that wasn't in the others, a clause about evidence of family hardship or abuse that could trigger early access to the funds for protection and establishment of independent living. The amount? $4.5 million. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Morgan's trust was contingent on maintaining family harmony and demonstrating good character as determined by family consensus. My great-grandfather, it seemed, had seen something in the family dynamics even then. He protected me in death in a way no one had in life. I spent the next 12 years meticulously documenting everything. I learned about contemporaneous records from a legal blog, understanding that documentation created at the time of events carried more weight than memories recalled later. I kept journals, hidden in a safety deposit box I'd opened with birthday money at a bank my family didn't use. I saved every text message, every email, every social media post. But the real power came from the recordings. Indiana is a one-party consent state for recordings, meaning I could legally record conversations I was part of. I had hundreds of hours of audio. Morgan's verbal abuse. My mother's drunken confessions of using me as her emotional support system. My father admitting he knew Morgan was lying about me but didn't care because it was easier to go along with it. Even well-intentioned parents can unwittingly create narcissists and worsen submissive behaviors in other siblings, creating victims who become anxious, guilt-ridden, perfectionistic, and emotionally shut down. My parents weren't evil, just weak. But their weakness had consequences, and I bore the brunt of them. I also discovered something else during those years of documentation. Morgan had been slowly siphoning money from our grandparents. Small amounts at first, a check here, a credit card charge there. But it added up. They'd taken nearly $200,000 over 5 years, all while maintaining their golden child status, all while our grandparents struggled with retirement expenses. The evidence was all there in the financial records I'd been forced to manage as part of my parentified role. The irony wasn't lost on me. The very abuse they subjected me to gave me access to the evidence of their crimes. The breaking point came at my cousin Sarah's wedding in September 2024. It was held at the Grand Wayne Convention Center, the same venue where Morgan had humiliated me at my graduation years earlier. The entire extended family was there: aunts, uncles, cousins, family friends, about 130 people in total. I had been assigned, as always, to handle the behind-the-scenes work. Setting up decorations, managing vendors, solving last-minute crises. I'd been up since 4 a.m., ensuring everything was perfect. Meanwhile, Morgan was in the bridal party, despite barely knowing Sarah, because they'd manipulated their way into the position with their usual charm. The reception was in full swing when it happened. Morgan had been drinking heavily, their usual controlled facade slipping. They found me taking a brief break in the corner, eating my first meal of the day. "There's our little servant," they slurred, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Hiding in the corner, as usual. You know, everyone here feels sorry for you, Bowie. The family burden we all have to tolerate." I stood up to leave, but they grabbed my arm. "Don't walk away from me. You're nothing. You've always been nothing. A parasite. Living off the family's pity." The music had stopped for speeches, and Morgan's voice carried across the silent room. "You want to know a secret?" They turned to address the room, still gripping my arm. "Bowie here thinks there's some kind of victim. Poor, pathetic Bowie. Always whining about being mistreated. But we all know the truth, don't we? They're the problem. Always have been." They released my arm with a shove that sent me stumbling backward. "God, even looking at you makes me sick. You're like a walking reminder of what failure looks like. 27 years old, and what have you accomplished? Nothing. You're still the same worthless. That's enough." The voice came from an unexpected source: Sarah, the bride. She walked over in her wedding dress, her face a mask of controlled fury. "Morgan, you're drunk. Leave. Now." Morgan laughed. "Oh, come on, Sarah. It's just Bowie. Everyone knows." I said leave. The room was dead silent. Morgan looked around, expecting support, but found only uncomfortable faces looking away. They stormed out, but not before declaring, "You'll all regret this. Especially you, Bowie. I'll destroy you." Sarah turned to me, her eyes soft. "I'm so sorry, Bowie. I've watched this happen for years and never said anything. None of us did. That changes now. But I knew it wouldn't. The ringleader of abuse in the family requires that everyone sees things how they see them, using any means necessary to coerce family members into agreement." By the next morning, Morgan had already begun their damage control, texting family members about how I'd ruined Sarah's wedding by causing a scene. That's when I decided 20 years of abuse was enough. It was time to use the evidence I'd collected. The planning took 3 months. 3 months of careful preparation, legal consultation, and strategic positioning. I hired a lawyer specializing in family financial abuse using the small savings I'd managed to accumulate from my job as a freelance web developer, work I'd had to hide from my family because they would have demanded the money. The lawyer, Jennifer Martinez, was herself a survivor of narcissistic abuse. When I showed her my documentation, her eyes widened. "Bowie, this is one of the most comprehensive cases of long-term documentation I've ever seen. You have enough here for criminal charges, not just civil action." We developed a multi-pronged approach. 1. The legal component: filed charges for financial elder abuse regarding the money Morgan had stolen from our grandparents. In Indiana, financial exploitation of elderly individuals is a level 6 felony. 2. The trust fund: activate the abuse clause in my trust to gain immediate access to my inheritance, using the documented evidence of 20 years of abuse. 3. The public exposure, create a comprehensive document exposing the family dynamics, backed by evidence, to be released strategically. 4. The psychological report, have a psychologist evaluate my documentation and provide an expert opinion on the systematic abuse I'd endured. Dr. Patricia Hughes from Purdue University Fort Wayne's Department of Psychology reviewed my case. Her report was damning. She identified clear patterns of parentification as a form of mental abuse and boundary violation, noting that the long-term effects aligned with those seen in survivors of sustained psychological torture. But the masterpiece of the plan was the timing. Morgan had been building toward their own big moment. They were launching a coaching business focused on family harmony and personal development. They'd invested everything into it, leveraging their social media following to pre-sell courses and coaching packages. The launch event was scheduled for December 15, 2024, at the Allen County Public Library's Community Center. I would strike on December 14. December 14, 2024, 9 a.m. The email went out to every family member, every mutual friend, and every professional contact I could find for Morgan. The subject line, "The Truth About Morgan and Our Family, a 20-year documentation of abuse." The email contained a 50-page PDF documenting 20 years of abuse with evidence. Audio recordings of Morgan's verbal abuse and financial manipulations. Screenshots of their social media posts cropping me out or mocking me. Financial records showing the theft from our grandparents. Dr. Hughes's psychological evaluation. A link to a website I'd created with all the evidence organized chronologically. Within an hour, my phone was exploding. Family members were calling, texting, leaving voicemails. I didn't answer any of them. I had one more card to play. At 12 p.m., I posted on TikTok. The video was simple, a slideshow of family photos through the years, showing how I was progressively pushed to the margins, literally and figuratively. The audio was Morgan's voice from the wedding, declaring me worthless. The caption read, 20 years of being the family scapegoat. Today, I'm free. #narcissistic abuse #family scapegoat #survivor. The video went viral within hours. By 3 p.m., Morgan's coaching business Instagram was flooded with comments from people who'd seen the evidence. Screenshots of their cruel messages were being shared with captions like, "This is who's teaching about family harmony?" Their carefully crafted image was crumbling in real time. At 4 p.m., the police arrived at Morgan's apartment. I wasn't there, but I heard about it later from neighbors. They were arrested for financial elder abuse. The evidence I'd provided was overwhelming: bank records, forged signatures, unauthorized credit card usage spanning years. At 6 p.m., I received an email from the trust administrator. My abuse clause had been validated. The $4.5 million would be transferred to my account within 48 hours. At 8 p.m., my TikTok video hit 1 million views. Comments poured in from other scapegoat survivors sharing their stories. The hashtag #BowieStrong started trending. At 10 p.m., Morgan called from jail. I let it go to voicemail. Their message was exactly what you'd expect from a narcissist: blame, threats, and not a single ounce of accountability. "You've destroyed our family, Bowie. You're sick. You need help. When I get out, I'm going to sue you for defamation. You've ruined my life over nothing. Nothing. Nothing." 20 years of abuse was nothing to them. The next few weeks were a hurricane of consequences for Morgan and revelations for the family. Morgan's coaching business collapsed overnight. The people who'd prepaid for courses demanded refunds. Their social media followers dropped from 50,000 to less than 3,000 in a week. The remaining followers seemed to be there just to watch the train wreck. The legal consequences were severe. Morgan was charged with financial exploitation of an elderly person, level 6 felony. Theft, class A misdemeanor. Fraud, level 6 felony. Identity theft, level 6 felony. The evidence I'd collected showed they'd stolen not just from our grandparents, but had also opened credit cards in my name during college, running up $15,000 in debt that I'd been paying off for years, thinking it was mine. They'd intercepted my mail to hide the evidence, but I'd found the applications in their handwriting during my documentation process. The family imploded. My parents, faced with undeniable evidence of their enabling and participation in the abuse, had different reactions. My mother went into complete denial, claiming the recordings must be edited or taken out of context. My father, surprisingly, broke down. He called me, sobbing, admitting everything. "I knew," he said. "I knew what was happening to you and I did nothing. I was a coward." In narcissistic family systems, members typically band together to claim the scapegoat is mentally ill or problematic, making them the reason for all the family's ills. True to form, Morgan's supporters, mainly my mother and a few aunts, started a campaign claiming I was having a mental breakdown and had fabricated evidence. This backfired spectacularly when Jennifer Martinez, my lawyer, released a statement with receipts. Bank records don't lie. Audio recordings with date stamps don't lie. The paper trail was undeniable. My grandparents were devastated but grateful. They'd been manipulated into believing Morgan was helping them with their finances, never realizing money was being stolen. They pressed charges independently, adding weight to the criminal case. The TikTok video continued to gain traction. It hit 10 million views by Christmas. Then something unexpected happened. It caught the attention of a documentary filmmaker who was working on a project about narcissistic family systems. They reached out, wanting to feature my story. But the most satisfying moment came during Morgan's sentencing hearing in March 2025. The courtroom was packed. Family members, local media, the case had become news in Fort Wayne, and other survivors who'd been following the story online. Morgan stood before the judge, their designer clothes replaced with a county jail uniform, their perfectly styled hair now flat and unkempt. The judge had reviewed all the evidence. "In my 20 years on the bench," she said, "I've rarely seen such a comprehensive pattern of manipulation, theft, and psychological abuse." The defendant shows no remorse, continuing to blame the victim even now. Morgan was sentenced to 3 years in prison, suspended to 18 months with good behavior, 5 years probation, mandatory restitution of $215,000 to my grandparents, mandatory restitution of $15,000 to me for the identity theft, 200 hours of community service, mandatory psychological counseling. But before the sentencing, I was allowed to give a victim impact statement. I stood at the podium, looking at Morgan for the first time since the wedding. They tried to stare me down, but I saw the fear in their eyes. "For 20 years, I began, you told me I was nothing. A burden. Worthless. You stole my childhood, my peace, my sense of self. You turned our family into your personal kingdom where you ruled through manipulation and cruelty." I paused, letting the weight of the words settle. "But you made one mistake. You gave me access to everything in your attempts to humiliate me. Every financial document you made me handle, every family event you made me organize while you took credit, every moment you thought you were breaking me, I was documenting. I was building a case. I was finding my power. You created your own downfall, Morgan. Your narcissism, your need to hurt me, your confidence that I was too broken to fight back, that was your undoing. I want you to know that every day you're in that cell, every dollar you have to pay back, every opportunity you've lost, you did that. Not me. You. I'm not nothing. I never was. I'm a survivor. And now, finally, I'm free." The courtroom erupted in applause. The judge didn't stop it. It's been 6 months since that day in court. My TikTok video ultimately reached 39 million views. The documentary about my story premiered last month, raising awareness about narcissistic family abuse. I've received thousands of messages from other survivors saying my story gave them hope, gave them strength to document their own abuse, gave them permission to fight back. With the $4.5 million from my trust, I've done several things. 1. Bought a house in Denver, far from Fort Wayne and the memories. 2. Started a foundation for survivors of family scapegoating. 3. Funded my own therapy and healing journey. 4. Pursued my dream of becoming a writer. I've also done something that might surprise you. I've forgiven my family. Not for them, but for me. Forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. I haven't spoken to most of them since the trial. But I've released the anger because holding on to it was keeping me chained to the past. Morgan was released after serving 8 months. They tried to rebuild their online presence, but the internet doesn't forget. Last I heard, they were working at a call center, living with the same aunt who used to enable their behavior. The golden child had turned to tarnished brass. My parents divorced. My father went to therapy and has tried to make amends. We have coffee once a month. It's awkward, painful sometimes, but it's progress. My mother still maintains I destroyed the family. I've made peace with the fact that she'll never see the truth. Healing from parentification requires examining extant relationships to create mutual, healthy, supportive, and boundaried relationships. I've learned to set boundaries, to say no, to prioritize my own needs for the first time in my life. It's still hard. 20 years of programming doesn't disappear overnight. But here's what I want you to know if you're watching this and seeing yourself in my story: document everything. Trust your reality. You're not crazy. You're not the problem. The abuse is real, even if there are no visible bruises. And most importantly, you can survive this. You can thrive after this. Your family may never acknowledge what they did to you, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. Your truth is valid. Your pain is real. And your freedom is possible. If you're still trapped in a narcissistic family system, start documenting today. Get a secret email account. Take photos of documents. Record conversations if it's legal in your state. Build your case. Find your power. If you've escaped but are struggling with the aftermath, know that healing is not linear. Some days you'll feel strong, others you'll grieve the family you should have had. Both are valid. Both are part of the journey. And if you're someone who recognizes they might be enabling abuse in their family, stop. Your silence is compliance. Your neutrality is choosing the side of the abuser. Speak up. Stand up. Be the family member that someone like me desperately needed. They say the best revenge is living well. I disagree. The best revenge is living authentically. For 20 years, I lived as someone else's projection of worthlessness. Now, I live as myself, flawed, healing, but genuinely me. Morgan took my childhood, but they didn't take my future. They took my family's love, but they didn't take my capacity to love. They took my peace for 2 decades, but they didn't take my ability to find it again. This story went viral not because revenge is sweet, though it is, but because it resonates with a truth millions of us know: sometimes, the people who are supposed to love us the most hurt us the deepest. And sometimes, the only way to heal is to burn it all down and rebuild from the ashes. I am Bowie. I am 27 years old. I am worth $4.5 million. But more importantly, I am worth love, respect, and peace. I always was. And so are you.